All right.
Stream looks good. I'm just going live. And we appear to be live. All right. It's Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are reviewing Metroid Dread on the Nintendo Switch. All right, open E,
It's
whatever.
not for anything else. Is that really necessary?
Well, because so it was originally intended to come out on the DS, and they canceled the project because the DS couldn't do even close to a real Metroid game.
I mean, they had real Metroid games on the GBA, and DS.
Not on this level. They said that Nintendo, this is like official, for technical limitations. They basically said they weren't going to make Metroid Dread on the DS, and they deferred the project until the Switch.
They made the Metroid 2 Samus Returns on the DS.
Yep. And then there was the DS game that had the shitty multiplayer.
Well, that's
on the original DS.
That's not the same.
Yeah, but this was original DS they were talking. All right. Anyway, jump in whenever you want.
Okay. Not working. Just every day, waking up, do whatever I want.
Working. Working. I was at work today.
Some way that I could do this and live this life of wake up and do whatever I want.
Oh.
But also, A, not have it be cold. B, not have a pandemic outside so I can do things. And C, have enough money so that someone else could do all these chores for me. Because that.
Oh, so you want to be landed gentry with like butlers?
Well, I think everyone deserves that, and even the people who will end up doing the chores, it's like, okay, they shouldn't have to do that more than once a week or something.
Well, the way I've always thought about it, like the ideal democratic communism I want, the idea is that you give everyone bare minimum, like they live, everyone's got everything they need to live,
and also
be relatively happy.
Say, for example, even more socialisms, right? Like we had a shared kitchen, it's like, oh, well, then I could just clean that kitchen once a week. And then I got
that's it. The only reason to have capitalism is to incentivize people to do things.
Instead of having 7 kitchens for 7 people who have to clean the 7 kitchens once a day every day, you could have one kitchen. Everyone cleans it once a week.
But what if some of the people in your building with that shared kitchen are just to use a phrase that I've liked lately to describe certain kinds of people, shit asses?
Then you get kicked out.
By who? What if the majority of the people using that kitchen?
That's doing the work of living there is part of the rent, effectively. So you would get.
You've reinvented the co-op.
Yes, exactly.
Like the Soviet style co-op.
Yeah, not the Co-op City co-op.
No, the way I look at it,
I'm getting all kinds of stuff done over here. Having all sorts of good times. Some of it's meta moment material. What's not meta moment material?
Sitting around, looking around?
Yeah, stuff.
Yeah, I got my booster, and the reason we missed Wednesday Geek Nights last week is that the booster, I was basically out of commission for 48 hours after that thing.
Well, I didn't have any really problems with the first 2, 6 to 8 months ago, other than pain in the arm. So we'll see what happens.
That was my first shot.
I thought I was getting my booster the day after Thanksgiving, but I was just an idiot, and I didn't read the calendar correctly.
You weren't the only one. Emily was trying to get an appointment quickly and got one at CVS. Their website is so shitty, 3 a.m., because I guess that was an option.
Oh, no. What happened was
we fixed that.
Doctor app. I opened my doctor app, and it said Friday, and it was a few days before Thanksgiving. So I just said, it said Friday something, and I didn't look beyond Friday. So I just said, yes, appointment for Friday at 12:30. And I went in Friday at 12:30, and they were like, no,
Friday.
Appointment for Friday, December 19th. So I guess I'm going there 12 days from now because, I'm staying inside for all these days. It doesn't really matter.
I'm telling you, the most anxiety-inducing thing that ever happens in my life, I mean, I have a pretty good life, is I'm always vaguely afraid that I'm going to have an appointment to do a thing, like meet someone, get on a plane in particular, and I'll just show up on the wrong day. Like, I'll just have fucked up my calendar and show up on the wrong day. And like, your flight was yesterday. You're not going to PAX. Or, flight to PAX? That flight is next week. What's wrong with you?
I may have discussed this when it happened many, many years ago. Not that many years ago, but I was living in New York City at least, maybe early 2010s. There was some College Humor thing in the city when College Humor was still a thing, and I had bought tickets to it. And then I was in the shower one day, and I thought about it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that thing. When was that thing?" And I get out of the shower, and I go and I look. I search in my email for the tickets to it, and I'm like, "Yeah, what day was that thing?" It turned out it was that day, and it was too late to go. It had already begun. And I was like, I bought tickets to a thing and just didn't go. I wasn't doing anything that day. I just didn't go because I forgot about it. And then I started using Google Calendar, and it never happened again.
All right, so
it actually happened. It wasn't like some dream of like got tickets, didn't use them. I actually had tickets and didn't use them.
I finally, after like 2 years of this pandemic, stopped having the recurring dream of my brain just knows that there's Paxes on this certain cadence plus MagFest that we go to and perform at. So I have like a whole, like my brain is just like, you know that feeling when you're laying in bed and you feel comfortable and your alarm hasn't gone off yet, but you almost feel like you've been laying in bed too long and you have the fear of, did my alarm not go off? Did I not set it? Did I just sleep through it? It feels too late.
Why would I set my alarm?
Because you're an old man. I don't know what's up with you. If I don't set an alarm, I'll just sleep forever.
I mean, I basically am just sleeping until my body decides to get up. That seems good.
I mean, my body would like to get up around 10, which is not really an option.
I don't have anywhere to go.
True.
I don't have any appointment.
But my brain just has this cadence of PAXs happen on this like fairly reliable schedule. And then suddenly I'm just not going to them. And my brain's like, yo, dog, didn't you write the panels? When are your panels? What panels are you doing? When's the next PAX? Shouldn't you be there already?
No. Anyway,
there's a bunch of gaming news. I guess we can start with little things. So a bunch of games are having problems right now because a bunch of things are having problems right now because Amazon is like super fucking down.
Yep, we've talked about this before. We'll talk about it again, I'm sure, is that, it's too many internet services are hosted on Amazon Web Services cloud platform and the services that they provide. And most people who set up things on Amazon Web Services, they do offer ways to, for example, create a database that's like multi-region so that like if one region explodes or gets cut off, your database is still up in other regions and you're very resilient if you do that sort of setup. But that kind of setup isn't just like a push button thing. It requires, even though they do a lot of the hard work for you, it still requires engineering effort and money. They charge more money for that, right? So the vast majority of people who set up things on Oz set things up just very simply the way you would with any other hosting, the way that like the GeekNights website is set up, even though that's not on Oz. It's a partially, I guess, but mostly not. Just an EC2 instance, whatever. So, and most people, because the way the world works, have things set up in the US East 1 region zone, right? Because US East is where people are, right? Where we live also, where people. It's where the most people are, and it's closer to Europe than US West. So even California companies, all the Silicon Valley people will still...
I've never set something up in US West, ever.
I have multi-region stuff in US West, just for... That's what I use it for. Any region that's not US East, it's like US East is always the primary region where you do everything, and then the other regions are just like the backup failovers, right?
Pretty much.
So yeah... US East is having problems today, big problems. And that means that, a lot of things, a lot of internet services of all kinds are down or broken because we've built all on this one thing. And if that one thing breaks, a lot of other things break.
Now, it's interesting because on one hand, from an individual perspective, especially because it's Tuesday, like a small gaming company, it's way cheaper and cost-effective to just spin up cloud services to do stuff. Like having physical data centers is very much a huge expense and a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah, I mean, it pays off for you in terms of some things like your hardware costs, right? So it's like you buy computers and then you don't have to buy computers again, whereas you have to pay Oz monthly. So eventually those computers pay for themselves and you don't need new ones, and hard drives won't break that much. And then you end up saving money over this like long term.
Yep. You can even go further. A lot of people
to manage them.
A lot of people don't even make servers. They're not putting like a virtual server on EC2 and Amazon. A lot of people, newer things especially, are just leveraging cloud services to directly provide services via those capabilities of the cloud without actually having like a so-called server running an operating system up there.
Well, it is still a server running an operating system, but they call it serverless because the cloud provider gives you an abstract interface via which to launch your application, usually some kind of container. So you'll make a Docker container, and normally if you wanted to host that yourself, you would have to make a Kubernetes cluster and all this stuff right on servers. Instead, Amazon made a cluster, and they have this Fargate thing, and they have this ECS thing, and it's like you just give your container to that, and they built up all this software that hides the servers from you, even though they are very much there.
Now, what's interesting is this affects a lot of things. Like VR chat has a bunch of random parts of VR chat that are down right now because of this. But one thing, something I've always internalized in the kinds of jobs I've had when we're doing a risk assessment is that for many companies that are not mission critical, where lives depend on them, Amazon and things like it don't go down that often. But also,
it's pretty rare.
If they do go down, the answer you can give is basically, well, yes, we're down, and so is everybody else. Nobody has an advantage over us right now, so who gives a shit?
That's one thing.
Yeah, similar to the calculus of
situation in which, from an individual perspective, right, using this platform is the most cost-effective, best way of doing things. But from a societal perspective, everyone putting all their services, all their eggs into one basket is like not. It's like, I got one egg. What basket do I put it in? The biggest, strongest basket. So now you have everyone puts their one egg into this basket, and now it's a big, strong basket, but all the eggs are in that one basket.
Well, like with Google, you and I both have a lot of our data in Google services. If Google got hacked, like for real, like somehow compromised fully, worst case scenario, on one hand, yes, a lot of very personal information is now compromised for me. On the other hand, society has deep problems because of that hack. Like, so big that my problems are almost lost in the shuffle.
Yep.
So,
anyway.
Yeah, the ramifications of this on a like infrastructure level are more of a Monday episode. But yeah, if you're trying to play some game and something's not working today, good chance it's due to this Amazon outage.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll see, the companies that do really care about never being down, perhaps not just go multi-region, but also maybe like have a fail over to Azure, fail over.
Oh, that already exists. All big companies do that. At least companies that care.
Of course, but
in fact, there's services that will auto-deploy your shit to all the different cloud services and like work between them. Like there are people who sell access.
Will those get some more customers?
The problem is, I feel like a lot of those things have their own single points of failure, such that it doesn't solve the fundamental problem of everyone's moving to these services run by giant megacorps that don't have our best interests at heart.
Yep. I would like to see a return or, a resurgence in not the bullshit crypto distribution model, but the real distributed model of the internet, which is just that everyone runs servers all over the place. We got a web, the way email works, the way the web works.
Well, the way email worked.
Right, exactly. But, the way
the original conception works, for you nerds who don't listen to Monday Geek Nights, web browsers and the World Wide Web was just one of many things we could use the internet for. And the big idea of a website or web stuff was that every web browser is also a web server. Everyone makes content and everyone interlinks with everyone else's content. And there is no central server for really anything.
Yep. Anyway. So, other news going down. A really common thing these days is you find someone that you're a fan of and you join their Patreon. And Patreon has a Discord integration that's very well polished.
So right. I keep forgetting I should enable that for our Patreon.
Yeah. So you join a Patreon, and then if the person who runs the Patreon associates that Patreon with a Discord server, then and you have your Discord account linked to your Patreon account, then when you Patreon someone, you automatically get joined to their Discord server. And on top of that, the person who runs that Patreon can now give you access to like special patron-only channels or features or roles or benefits and whatnot. And it's just a really common model, and it makes sense, right? It's like you're, producing some sort of entertainment. Maybe you're a Twitch streamer, probably. You get money from subs, you get money from, whatnot, donations, advertisements if you run those. And then, people want to join your community. So, they want to join your Discord, not just your Twitch channel, and make friends with the other people who are fans of you. And you can charge them money to do that. Well, Discord is now realizing like, hey, why are we letting Patreon take all the money on this model? And they are now testing something that I imagine will eventually become a widespread feature, which is, you could just make a Discord server and directly, without integrating any other services, gate all or some of the features and channels in the Discord server behind money. So somebody using only Discord and nothing else, no Twitch, no Patreon, no nothing, could set up a server and say, hey, you want to join this Discord server? $5. You want to join the secret VIP room? $25 a month.
It's a great way to even do things like people who make a clan or a raiding group, like small time things for like playing games online, having their little membership dues to pay for like whatever stuff they do as a group. There's a lot of ways to use this kind of thing.
Yeah. So it has a lot of things going on, but the fact is, Discord, sort of bumping out Patreon, right? But also I could see it as even bumping out, you think, how could they bump out Twitch? Well, it's like, you can just stream on Discord. If you get enough people into your Discord server, and people can find your Discord server somehow, either via maybe a Twitter or something.
Yep.
You might not even need the Twitch. You can just completely stream only on Discord to your own people.
You can avoid copyright stuff to a big degree, and you can also have a more intimate, closed experience with, we always talk about like very few people can be a megastar in any domain. That's just rare, often toxic, but a lot of small content creators have a small but dedicated group of fans who like exactly what they're doing, and this is a great way to concentrate them together, and they will pay that person to keep making the thing that they specifically care about.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do this already, but the problem is the money that they're getting doesn't come in through Discord. It has to come in through some other channel, right? But yeah, I think this is pretty much, you can see this is clearly now the established model is create some content, not for people like us who aren't trying to make money, but the people who are trying to make money. The model is create art, put the art out there on some channel for free of some kind so that people can find you and become a fan of you, and then charge money for either, some exclusive arts, even though that's not perfect because those can leak very easily. And then charge money to either join the community or join the VIP part of the community or both, because you can there's no way somebody can like steal that.
Yep.
Right.
It's also interesting because I think there's a few things going on here. One is the economy is kind of messed up, and this is a way for small creators to make a revenue stream and avoid a lot of the middlemen that provide nothing and just collect rent along the way. It's also a way to sustain the people who have the 1,000 true followers. But the cynical side of me says that what we're going to see is every goddamn service on Earth is going to try to come up with some half-assed way. Discord, I think, is doing a good job with this, but I can imagine a lot of other online services trying to come up with an equivalent thing and try to get people to self-monetize via their platforms with whatever it is their platform provides. I think we're going to see a lot of these spin up and a lot of them go away over the next few years. But I bet Discord will stick around. I think Discord, Patreon, maybe OnlyFans. I don't know. There's some trouble with them still. We'll see who survives this current round, I guess.
Yep.
I can even see using this. A lot of people have like a family and friends Discord or like a private Discord where...
And why would you collect money then?
Well, say in your group of friends, you do an annual beach house retreat or an annual party somewhere, and this is the way everyone pays the dues to a central place to cover the cost of that party every year.
I don't think this works that way. I think this is. Oh, you mean it's like everyone pay $5 a month to join the Discord?
Yep. Or the people who are in the channel where the party happens.
Just be like, hey, if you want to, I'll tell you the address of the party if you Venmo me $10.
Nah.
Like,
more, I know some friends, not our friend group even, but some friends of ours have talked about, Chase in particular, groups of friends that set up like more complex, larger structures. Like these are friend groups that are a little more organized and they're almost like mini conventions.
Yeah, you can do that sort of
I'm in
thing.
a few Discords that are kind of like that.
That charging everyone a monthly fee that Discord takes a cut of is going to be the model for you need your friends to collect money together.
I feel like it only could be.
Definitely is only going to work for collecting money from the public and your fans.
I think that could work if you had sufficient scale of friends and sufficient scale of activities that
if you have that many friends, those aren't friends. Those are now fans, right? There's that many people.
Nah. You could argue that line gets blurry at a certain weird size between really big and very small.
You're going to charge people a monthly fee, and if they're not just fans or audience of some kind. I don't think that really.
I can see specific use cases.
I think what it also could work well for is, Patreon and these sorts of things aren't often used by big companies. If you're a big company, say a video game developer, publisher, right? You set up a Discord for your fans because you don't have a forum anymore because, who would do that, right? You have your actual paid community managers in there and whatnot.
Yep.
But then you have your gated channels that cost money. And in those channels, you're giving out, beta keys and you're actually getting feedback from, the people. Right?
This does sidestep, but it causes another externality. The same problem that Twitter has and that Twitch has is that any rando can make an account and start fucking around. As soon as you have to pay for the thing you want, like pay to be able to chat in the Discord or the Twitch, 99% of trolls and harassers disappear because very few people are motivated enough in their hate of some creator to pay a monthly fee to harass them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you retreat to your own Discord, it's like, yeah, you're going to still need moderation in there, obviously, but a lot less than just some public Twitch.
Yeah. I think this is trouble for Twitch.
Cool if there was some way to, on Twitch, right, sort of erase the Twitch chat, just like block it all, and then have a Discord chat be funneled in. It's like you can't chat there unless you go to the Discord, which could be gated. But
Twitch would never let you do that because that would undercut a lot of how they make money.
Of course it would.
But if you did that in your own
the Twitch video, you see chats from the Discord. So everyone in Discord has to know that they're chatting publicly.
Yep.
But that no public people can chat. They can only read.
We're waiting for a few new features. I've done a little bit of testing, but we do plan to. Don't worry, we're not going to start charging money, but I do plan to start streaming the Geek Nights live, even if we keep doing it on YouTube. Also streaming it inside of the Discord. There's just some reasons.
They would add video to the stages. Then we'd be using that so much.
Yep. Video on the stages is like...
There's a Discord like feature suggestion website, an official one, and there is a post there that's like, hey, add video and screen sharing to stages, and it's got a lot of upvotes, but if everyone listening goes and upvotes it, that might encourage them to work harder on that. They got to be working on such an obvious feature, but that feature will be like an explosion of easy content.
Yeah. Can you imagine if we could just do our panels like in a Discord with slides up on the screen, video of us, people queuing up? There's so much cool shit we could do.
Taking Q&As that we don't like to do.
Yeah.
Guests. A guest on the show would just have to join the Discord and like join the stage, and we'd say, let them join stage. That's it. We'd be good to go.
We're here with a listener from Omaha who has some comments on our...
Yeah.
So, we're keeping an eye on this. We got a lot of other stuff in the hopper, obviously, but once Discord stages adds a little bit more, we'll be using it heavily, and we'll see where this community building goes. I think this is a material threat to Twitch today, because the cracks in the Twitch universe and ecosystem are definitely becoming more and more apparent, especially for non-white creators.
I think people need still some public thing, right? You can have your closed community, that's where your real action is, but you need some public thing so people can find you, right? Discovery isn't a problem for consumers because there's so much stuff. We don't need help discovering things.
Yeah.
Right?
If I never looked at the internet again, just from the games I know came out in the last few years, I could entertain myself for like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, exactly. So discovery is no longer a problem. That's the problem we're trying to solve. It's long been since oversolved. It's too easy to discover new awesome things that you don't have time for, right? The problem is on the other side, someone who creates something wants to be discovered. They need to shout louder than everyone else in that sea of things that are easy to discover.
Yep.
So
I think there's a lot of ways to address that, but that would turn this into a show about this. But we'll be talking about this topic again, mind you. Some other news. So we rotate through which AAA video game studio is the worst one at any given time, because the reality is
Ubisoft.
I was about to because Ubisoft is the news I'm about to talk about.
Ubisoft is always the most microtransaction-y, scammy, one with awful games.
Like Blizzard is really
the worst one.
Blizzard is really bad right now, partly because they laid off a bunch of QA people.
Blizzard fell up. Blizzard went, way off the deep end, Blizzard Activision. And then, EA is never good with their FIFA gambling. But
Riot, very similar problems to
regularly the worst one.
Yep, like Riot, don't forget, they have very similar problems to Blizzard. In fact, they had very similar problems recently to Blizzard, but now Blizzard is in the news because Blizzard's problems came back again.
They're bad. They're all bad, but it's like I would rank probably Ubisoft last place, EA second to last.
Yep.
Right?
Ubisoft is bad enough to where I would actively avoid Ubisoft games, even if the game itself was good. Thankfully,
I've been avoiding Ubisoft games for I don't even remember one I've bought.
Yep. Thankfully, I very rarely am even interested in any Ubisoft games because the kinds of games they tend to make,
they're all garbage. Usually.
But Ubisoft is really fighting for the crown of shittiest AAA studio. They are actively and aggressively pursuing NFTs now. So what they're going to do...
That's not a surprise.
No, not... What surprises me is that they didn't already have this live, that this is somehow new. But I was surprised that Ubisoft was not like the first adopter of this blockchain NFT bullshit. Ubisoft is trying to use blockchain, and they're launching this on December 9th in 2 days, to have gear in Ghost Recon, like cosmetic hats, basically. But when you get the hat in game, you get a fucking NFT. That means you own that hat, and that NFT will let you use that hat in the future other Ubisoft games. I want to now before we go any further, I want to point out
hold on a second. So this is actually approaching, right? Forgetting the environmental and
I did
other bullshit, right?
Yep.
This is actually approaching something where, hey, now suddenly owning in quotes, right? Having that token on the blockchain associated with your wallet cryptographically, right, would actually confer something resembling ownership. Like no one else in any Ubisoft game is going to ever be able to wear that specific hat because there's only one of them. They didn't make more.
Yep.
Right?
Some other game company, not Ubisoft, could be like, hey, if you have a particular NFT from the Ubisoft whatever ecosystem, then you get this same equivalent item or something similar in our game.
That. But also, the question is now, all right, so let's say I give Ubisoft money, they mint a blockchain coin, in their server, right, they look at that coin and they recognize that goes with my account somehow, maybe by looking at the wallet and then associate my wallet with my Ubisoft account. And then their server just, allows me to choose that hat to wear in various games.
There is a begged question.
Is, if I go... right? Because Ubisoft doesn't control the blockchain itself, right? Mm-hmm. So if I go and say, sell that coin, so I go to a coin exchange and I sell that coin to
they are directly saying they expect people to speculate on, trade, sell for real money, these things outside in the real world.
Right. So if I sell that coin, they could, but are they actually going to correctly and properly set up their servers to recognize that the hat has been sold. Who owns the hat now?
So
which Ubisoft account is the person who now owns the hat?
So the short answer is yes. That is, they're building their own service to do this.
But are they doing it right? I just don't have a lot of confidence that they will make it work technologically.
I think they'll make it work technologically.
There's a broken as all fuck.
I think there's a way deeper and more fundamental begged question. What part of this entire fucking thing requires blockchain?
None of it.
This could be done with their own database that they already have. The limiting factor on multiple games respecting the same token is implementing that in the games, not who has the ownership, but actually implementing the assets.
Yeah, they don't need to implement the use blockchain to do this. They could do it with the database, as is true for all blockchain things. Right?
Oh, but what if you want to sell them for real money? You can't do that with Counter-Strike. Well, guess what? In Team Fortress 2 and Counter-Strike, people sell those things for real money all the time. There's a million ways they can do it.
Valve's database. Valve has a database.
Yeah. Or remember the Diablo real money auction house?
Yeah, but what it does is it saves Ubisoft from having to implement these trading house, right?
Nope, because they are going to implement something far more complex to facilitate the recognition of these trades. They're also running this as their own service. They have a name for it. I think the more fundamental problem is no part of this ecosystem is in any way enhanced by using blockchain, NFTs, cryptocurrency bullshit than by just doing it a normal way. And I suspect
that's not new. That's that's not.
So I would say
everything. There's nothing that a cryptocurrency can do that can't be done with a database better, other than crime, right? Someone said that recently. It pretty much sums it up, right? So there's nothing new about that. Yeah, they could do it better with a database, but they could save themselves the effort of having to create, right, a trading house. Steam had this. People at Valve created a trading house where you could buy and sell things, right? They don't have to make that. All they have to do is, mint a coin when they give you a hat, and then look at the
so it looks like they're going to provide a trading house and use the technology as well.
Well,
so
they didn't save themselves anything.
Well, because they're not. The only reason a company like Ubisoft would ever do anything like this is solely that they want the buzz of the crypto bro bullshit to drive money their way. They're trying to get people to say, oh, Ubisoft supports NFTs, and I'm a dipshit, so I'm going to go use Ubisoft stuff now. Like, that's their goal.
It's just that, somebody...
It's a popular buzzword.
Yeah, but also if you're doing crime, it's like, well, if I could launder my money with some random, picture of a monkey, right? Or I could launder my money using an Ubisoft hat, and there's a chance that some kid might actually want that hat, and there might be some value to it instead of just a picture of a monkey.
Yep.
So that's probably a better place to launder my money.
Yep.
It's backed up by some legitimate evil company.
But if you're not trying to launder and commit crime and you just want to actually own the stupid monkey, none of this technology is needed for that, and it just destroys the earth for no reason.
Yes. That's not new, so there's no point in discussing the parts we've already discussed.
Yep. So here's a thread and a link to all the evil crap that Ubisoft is doing. And remember, Ubisoft
has been the worst.
As bad as Activision Blizzard is right now, and they're real bad, Ubisoft is the king of being a shitty AAA game company.
Yep.
I think that's plenty of news. We can skip talking about Garfield and Nickelodeon All-Star.
We don't need that.
Nobody needs that. All right, let me put a little marker here. All right. But anyway, things of the day. So this is a long video. This is an hour and 8 minutes long. It's from Wired. Thankfully, it is annotated in that YouTube way. So every single chapter of this video has its own tiny section in the timeline. And this is an explanation of every single style of beer on Earth in a good order of discussion from beginning to end.
Couldn't you just this sounds to me like that's good information even for someone who doesn't like or even drink any alcohol. But it feels like you could have just made that a web page instead of a video.
Oh, there's a million web pages like that. What I enjoy about the video is that it's not about no one should come to this video if you're trying to figure out the difference between a porter and a stout. Like, just go Google that. But if you just want to internalize the scope of beer and spend about an hour doing it, it's entertaining. It has a lot of context. It's really well done. It explains interesting and relevant details. I guess it's much more curated than any website I've seen like this. It's one of the rare examples of a video that I think is sufficiently information dense to be useful and interesting. It's also legitimately entertaining, even if you don't give a shit about beer. I learned a lot from this video.
What you could do, I think, is if this was a web page, right? If I was someone who cared about beer,
there are web pages like that. I could link to like 10 of them. Big. Right, there's like two different competing big beer wikis.
What I would do is I would just make a fucking checklist, and I would drink one of everything over a period of time.
This provides a lot of history and interesting context, too, that I did not know about some of these varieties of beers. Some beers I thought were very similar, have very different histories. It reminded me that Czech Pilsners are delicious for a reason. I highly recommend this video.
Is sugar the reason?
No. Better quality hops.
I don't know.
Better quality and specific varieties of hops is the main reason.
Anyway. All right. So there's an old game, an Atari game, called Pole Position. And Pole Position, I think, is actually a fantastic game because even with a crappy old computer from the 80s that doesn't have a lot of bits, a racing game was actually one of the earliest types of games, and you could make a really smooth, high-quality racing game without much because the only controls you have are sort of analog left and right. And
it's not really 3D like the way they actually render these graphics.
Right, exactly. And, there's not much to it. It's just sort of like, hey, stay in line. Don't go on the grass, right? It's not that complex.
I don't remember if it was a launch title, but there was an Atari 2600 Pole Position, whatever. But there was when the Atari 7800 came out, which was similarly powerful pre-MMC chip to the Nintendo Entertainment System. It had some flaws that made it not succeed in the end, of course.
You and your 7800 talking to, everyone.
No, but they released...
How many times are you going to go on about this?
They released a 7800 only version of Pole Position that was shockingly advanced for its time.
Yeah. I mean, there were plenty of games. There was Outrun, Rad Racer, all kinds of these games. So
Ridge Racer,
the first one, and the other ones didn't, make too much improvement on it. I guess Outrun had better music and art and whatnot. But anyway, so for a very long period of time, there was a high score at Pole Position, right? We're talking arcade Pole Position with the actual sit-down cabinet with the steering wheel and everything. And no one had really broken it. But this person in September, I had this thing of the day sitting around a while. I just didn't use it until now. In September, Daniel Yamnitz, on their own YouTube channel, recorded a video of themselves on presumably the cabinet that they own, playing the legit old original Pole Position on the tournament competition settings. They even at the end of the video they're like, "Oh, I got the high score. I better go take a look at the jumpers to prove I didn't cheat." Right? It doesn't look like they cheated at all, and they beat the world record for Pole Position. It's quite amazing. I've always wondered, what was the fastest way to race in Pole Position? Because it's a pretty short game, right? You do a qualifier, you do a race, and that's sort of it. You don't keep racing or anything. So apparently the fastest way to do it is obviously you got to start in low gear, and then go to high gear as soon as you can, and stay in high gear and drive like a lunatic, and only go down to low gear and hit the brakes. I can't even tell if he's hitting the brakes, but for very short periods of time when you're taking like the really hard turns or otherwise in danger, and stay out of the grass as much as possible. Obviously, only go into it very briefly for these ridiculous turns. Obviously, don't crash into any other cars. And do that the whole time perfectly, and you'll get a score of 67,260. So congrats, Daniel. That was awesome. I like Pole Position. It's a good game.
It is a good game. God, now I just have flashbacks to hanging out in the, not RIT's cafeteria, but U of R's cafeteria, because there was that DDR machine and there was a Ridge Racer around the corner from it.
3D.
Yep. Ridge Racer's way later.
Cruising USA, I think, were the last significant racing games to have like the sort of 2D model.
Yeah, you want to go old, look at Night Driver on the Atari 2600. The road is just dots.
Yep.
On two sides. Car doesn't even move.
Racing was the first, major one to be 3D.
Oh my God, that Virtual Racing arcade machine with the 4 views you could pick between.
Virtual Racer is basically, I consider that to be pole position too, right? It's like, do I need any other racing games besides pole position and virtual racing? I feel like I don't. Anyway.
So, in the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book is still The Tale of Genji. We're going to do...
Since I'm not working, I read so many chapters, like yesterday and the day before.
It's easy to steamroll through if you just sit down and read. And like I've said before, if you don't sweat too much, like... who exactly is having a particular conversation, unless it's really important, you can read a summary or like figure that out after you finish the chapter. You'll just fly through.
Happens a lot is like, for example, in the chapter I just read, what actually happened in the chapter, some people talked about a thing, right? So the conversation was sort of what happened, but half the chapter was like describing the scenery of where they were in great detail. Like, yes, there were these torches and these flowers, and they were standing in this garden, and the garden looked like this, and there was an event happening in the garden that was like this. And then eventually they came, they were sitting between this curtain, and now they have the conversation.
It's interesting how the mini climaxes and like the big moments in Genji are these extremely short, like couple sentences, and then the entire rest of the chapter.
You totally missed them because there's no, narrative flow.
More than once I've been reading,
anyway,
and then I back up like, oh shit, did she just die? And I like back up like, oh shit. But I'll get several paragraphs past a death before I realize someone actually died right then.
Yep.
So people die. Body count's growing.
News. Since I'm not working, I got a lot of stuff going on. It's December, which means Advent of Code, even though I don't celebrate Christmas. I'm doing 25 two-part computing programming puzzles between December 1st and December 25th. So I'm uploading that to YouTube, my YouTube channel every day until I give up on it. Who knows? Last year I did all of them except 2 stars, so not too bad. Also, new website is coming along. Those are basically my 2 priorities, right? I'm doing a lot of things, but my 2 highest priorities are the new website, which is making a ton of progress now, and the reading the book, right?
Yep. So don't forget to invoice me for when we got to pay the our contractor. Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, things are moving along, and I'm also going to be making other things once those 2 other main priorities, right? I still got some time after that, so stuff's happening.
And on Friday this week, I will be at PAX Unplugged for a few hours. I'm going to roll in at 1 p.m., do a panel in the Crab God Theater, Rare Game Mechanics. I've rewritten half this panel. I watched the panel we did before again. I did some more research. But if you are not already going to PAX Unplugged, you do not need to worry about missing this because, like I've said repeatedly, I am going to upload this to YouTube before the end of PAX Unplugged, unless something happens like, I don't know, someone steals my camcorder out of the back of the room and runs away with it and somehow escapes. Like, unless something terrible happens, video of this will be online before PAX Unplugged even ends on YouTube. And otherwise, we'll see how many shows we do toward the end of the holiday period when like holiday stuff happens, but we're both generally around, so generally GeekNights episodes are going to just keep coming out. All right, let's get right into it. So, full disclosure, I like Metroid games, but I have not played many recent Metroid games, and this Metroid Dread was literally my foray back into Metroid. I have not
played just about every Metroid game ever, some of them several times.
Yep. Also, you're pretty good and fast, especially at some of the older Metroids.
No, that is not true.
Relative to like average rando.
Fast, I am garbage next to people who are good and fast.
You're good and fast relative to the average rando.
That's because, I mean, that's true if it's a game that I've, played before, then I know where stuff is.
But, so I hadn't played a bunch of Metroids in a while. Scott got near the, did you actually beat it? Did you do the last little bit today? I haven't beaten it yet because I only started playing it like a week ago.
I played, when this game came out, Metroid Dread came out, I immediately played it a whole bunch.
Yep.
And I got all the way to the final boss, and then I didn't feel like beating it because I was like, no, then it's going to be over. There won't be any more Metroid.
I know that feeling. I fucked around not killing Ganon for a long time in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. So then Rim was like, well, let's do a show on it today. So I'm like, well, so earlier today, since, again, I'm not working the entire month, I went ahead and I just loaded it up and I beat the final boss. And that was the end.
Yep. I got to Bird Uncle and I just beat that big, like, tentacle boss. However far that is through the game, but it's moving along, and I played it enough to have a lot of thoughts on the game mechanics. Hot top level, though, Metroid Dread. Remember, it is a 2D Metroid, which is a big deal. 2D games, especially Metroidvanias and Metroids, are somewhat like they're my jam and they're Scott's jam. Just keep making them and making them good, and I'll just keep playing them. But 2, I really liked it so far. I plan to beat it soon, and I highly recommend it if you like 2D Metroid games.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. I think I talked about it a bit when it came out on the show, but
tiny bit.
Yeah, let's just reiterate, right?
Yeah.
It's like some people say that like this is the best Metroid there is, which, I could understand why you might say that, right? It's clearly the most polished, right? It has all the benefits of being made in the current year and not in 1990 whatever.
Yep.
Right?
Similar to how many people say Breath of the Wild is the best Zelda game ever made, and that is a plausible argument, but there are also very plausible counter arguments to that.
Yeah, it's sort of like when you're comparing like, baseball players now to Babe Ruth, and it's like, okay, it's like, Babe Ruth, if he had to play baseball now, would be like, he was a schlub, right? It's
or like hockey.
He would not be good if he had to play baseball now against current baseball player, right? But then again, if he was born in 1980 or 90 something, right, with the same DNA and the same, whatever, he would have had the advantages of all the modern advancements in nutrition and fitness, and maybe he would be even better, right?
Here's an example. There's a famous hockey player, Sawchuk. If you're not a hockey person, go Google a picture of this person. You'll understand exactly what his deal is. Was he great because he was great, or was part of his greatness because he was one of the few people willing to take pucks to the face in an era when there was not a lot of protection?
Also, Wayne Gretzky's got all those, so many goals and assists, but he played in a time where it was easier to score. If you had to play now, he wouldn't be able to score as much, right?
Yep.
So, people are like, well, is Ovechkin better than Gretzky? No, but he is a better scorer. Yeah, Wayne Gretzky would probably, if he had to play hockey today, if his career, when Ovechkin started his career, he probably wouldn't have, as many goals as Ovechkin has.
Of course, Wayne Gretzky would score from all over the place. He didn't have an office where everyone could be like, he's there, he's right fucking there, do something, or he's going to scout. There it goes.
He also mostly got assists at,
True.
Most of his unbeatable records are mostly points based and not goal based.
Yep.
Right?
Team player. But yeah, that's why it's hard to say if this is the best Metroid game.
So it's like if you just compare the games, all the Metroid games against each other, and don't take any other, don't sort of do any sort of grading, right?
Yep.
Then it's probably the best Metroid game. But if you say, well, look at what the games were when Super Metroid came out, it's like Super Metroid was punching way above its time, right?
Oh, Super Metroid was like a decade ahead of its time.
Right. Metroid Dread, is it ahead of its time? Not really. It's just sort of...
It's at its time. It's exactly what I wanted to play right now.
Right. It's just... It's the Metroid experience, right? Polished extremely heavily, right? And that's it, right?
Well, like very similar to, not to harp on this, Castlevania games, like the other half of the Metroidvania type of world. We had Symphony of the Night, which was phenomenal. There's a bunch of other 2D Metroids, Castlevanias that came after that. They're really good. Some of them might even be equal to, or in some ways, some narrow ways, I'm being very specific here, better than Symphony of the Night. However, if you look at what existed in that genre or that space before Symphony of the Night was like an alien from space coming down and handing unto us a new artifact.
Except for Super Metroid.
Yeah, but it was a super. There's a reason why the power of Super Metroid and Castlevania became a genre that to this day we call Metroidvania.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, if you like a Metroid game, Metroid Dread is going to give you, in terms of controls, in terms of graphics, in terms of design, music, everything. It's pretty much as good as it's going to be. right? You will find no flaw on this heavily polished stone. At least no flaw that you can say is sort of like a universal objective flaw, like there's something wrong with it, right? However, for at least me personally, this is what I mentioned the last time I talked about it. There are a few things that for me make it only second best to Super Metroid, probably, right? So the first is that there's a plot, and it's not a bad plot. It's a better plot than some of the Metroid Fusion, for example.
Yep. I like in the beginning how the plot is given to you in drips and drabs in typical video gamey way. Like, oh, here's a computer. It tells you some stuff. But then there's a point where Bird Uncle shows up and just spends 4 minutes just telling you what's happening.
Yeah, it's but the plot is, like Rim said, given to you in basically cutscenes, talking, voice acting, these sorts of things. Super Metroid, part of the magic of Super Metroid, and I am going to compare this game to Super Metroid a lot because
which is fair.
Right. Super Metroid, the only plot that they give you, and part of it was the technological limitations of the Super Nintendo. You couldn't really have a video cutscene with voice acting so easily, and not use up all the memory on the cartridge. But the only really plot it gives you in text form is just, that one voice acting at the beginning, right? Where it's the last Metroid is in captivity, the galaxy is at peace, and then some text, a little bit of text. And all the rest of the story is told to you in game. It's they don't cut away. It's spoilers for Super Metroid, right? When the baby Metroid that was at the end of Metroid 2 comes back and it's enormous, right? It's you just see it there. You're still Samus. You're still looking at the game. You're still walking around. You can try to shoot it and everything, right? It's it's right there. It's in it. The plot of Super Metroid is integrated into the gameplay the same way that Half-Life 1 and 2 do it. Half-Life 2 does it a little bit less good, because they trap you in a room and make guys talk to you sometimes. But even so, in my opinion, that is the right way to have a plot in a video game. A cutscene just makes it less of a game and more of a movie. Metroid Dread isn't like some ridiculous, Metal Gear cutscene thing where this cutscene's all over the place. It's mostly not cutscenes.
Yep.
But
when you beat a boss, you're playing the game fighting the boss the whole time. But when you finally beat the boss, most of the time it cuts to a really mini cutscene that shows how badass Samus is doing the things that you can't do with the controller.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of the plot is told to you with cutscenes as opposed to environmental storytelling, and that to me is a negative, right? I like the environmental storytelling better, where you're just playing the game the whole time.
Yep. Even the original Metroid, why are there these weird bird statues everywhere?
Right, exactly, right? Whereas here, it's the bird statues are these beings called Chozo. Here's one of them. It's talking to you now.
Of course, the original Metroid, you couldn't even know what they were at all. It wasn't even really that good of environmental
because it was in the instruction manual.
Yes, a bunch of text exposition that was given to you in a physical cutscene.
But all the instruction manual told you is it's Chozo. And you're what the fuck is Chozo? It didn't tell you anything else.
Yep.
Right? Regardless, the second thing is that other Metroid games, even Super Metroid to a large extent, there's bad guys that are just, the non-boss bad guys are, all over the place. But they're largely not a threat to you ever.
Unless you're not cautious. If you're just not that good or not paying attention or getting lazy, it's easy to bump into them.
Yeah, but for the most part, the bad guys in Metroid games are just sort of decorations on the level, right? They give you something to do, a reason to shoot your gun when it's not a boss, right? Just there's some bad guys in this room. I guess I have to push the shoot button a few times to get to the other side of the room. I can't just run across.
And it gives you a natural sense of progression in that as you just get better at the game, you can move through areas you've been through where there's enemies you know how to handle faster, more competently, with less thought. You just sort of memorize a pattern or know you can run past a certain guy or etc.
Or you have a better upgraded weapon at that point and they go down easier. Right?
But it does give you a sense of progression that you wouldn't get if you were just exploring and fighting bosses.
Yep. But for the most part, the bad guys aren't part of the challenge of a Metroid game, the normal bad guys. They're just, decoration, environment stuff, right? Whereas in Metroid Dread, the regular old bad guys, for, as you progress through the game, if you backtrack to an area where there's weaker bad guys than your current equipment, yeah, they're just going to be decoration.
Yep.
But as you're progressing through the game, the regular old bad guys are like in your way. You have to get past them, and you have to actually do a little bit of like action game button timing stuff to get to defeat them, right?
Yep.
They're not necessarily difficult, though there is a hard mode you can unlock after you beat the game, which probably does make them more difficult.
But they also, when they hit you, especially in an area you haven't fully explored yet that you're currently supposed to be in,
they'll mess you up.
They do a shit ton of damage. Way more than I expected.
Even on not hard mode, right? If you mess up, then you pay the price.
Yeah.
So, and also, right, the bosses are very much, the classic action game. Simon Says, you see this animation, that means you have to do this. That means slide. That means jump. That means dash to evade that enemy's attack. That means shoot him now, right? And that's how you defeat enemies, because that's how action games work, right? And then you also have some timing things, right? It's like when you see a flash, push X to counterattack. Yep. You also have a little bit of quick time event things at certain parts in, little cutscenes here and there. Not too much, very small amount.
Yep. We'll describe the Emmy thing because I think there's some interesting game mechanic stuff to talk about there. There's good and bad parts of that aspect of this game.
The point I'm making is that this Metroid is much more of an action game than other Metroids, where the action parts you can just sort of gloss over them and just.
Because
the exploring is what matters.
Because one specific thing I noticed in this Metroid compared to other Metroids I have played is that in this one, the typical fashion, you get items that let you interact with or get past obstacles you couldn't get past before, kind of like in Zelda 3. So now you can go back and go to an area you couldn't go to before. Like, that's a big part of the game loop. But in older Metroids, you could explore a lot more broadly. And when you got a new item, the game didn't do a ton of work to point you in the right direction of where you could use it. It kind of assumed you'd explore and figure stuff out, backtrack on your own, etc. This game, often, when you solve a puzzle in a certain area, you get to a certain point in these areas, it'll block paths in that area to really push you into backtracking toward where the interesting stuff is that you can interact with the things you recently acquired. So it'll you find a teleporter pad early in the game, the first one, and as soon as you use it, a bunch of shit falls down and blocks the path back, so you're forced to go forward in the area you just got to. That happens a lot. You can often get around those blocks if you really want to backtrack and get the one thing the game's guiding you away from, but it's often tedious, so I tend to just go where the game wants me to go. But it did remove a small aspect of exploration that I did enjoy more in other Metroid games.
At a certain point, the game does sort of unlock and you can go anywhere freely.
Yep.
But yeah, it's at least they did a better job of that than Metroid Fusion does. Metroid Fusion, literally, you're locked in this zone. Right? Yeah. Now go to the next zone. Whereas this did the same concept, but made it feel more natural and integrated. But it still was. I still prefer Super Metroid. It's like you can just go anywhere that you can go. It's up to you to remember where or figure out where remember there was a green door you couldn't open. You just got Super Missile. Where was that green door again? Oh, right. It was over in that place. Let me go to that place and use my green.
It is hard to express how fucking jazzed I was to be able to open green doors.
Right. That's
saw those green doors the whole game, and I'm just like, damn it. How do I get in there?
But anyway, so it's more of an action game. And the action game that it is an extremely polished, high-quality action game. There aren't much better. I just personally, I'm not playing Metroid for the action. So they put in one of the best possible action games. That's amazing. But I would rather have I'd rather have there be no action game. It's I want the enemies that don't really challenge me. I want it I'm there for the explore.
What do you want, just like Entry and Odyssey?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not there for, shooting the regular old bad guys or for a really complicated boss. I just want to fill the boss full of missiles, right? It's bad guy. Yeah, okay, I'll shoot the bad guy, but it's I don't want to have the duel with this regular old bad guy. And
but I also don't want to go back to original Metroid 1 on the NES of you'd better have 90 missiles and you don't miss with any of them.
Yeah, that's
fighting Kraid and Ridley in that game sucks.
There's a reason I'm comparing to Super Metroid, not regular.
Metroid 1 is you don't need to read it. This not like most Metroid games are worth playing. You don't really need to go back and beat the original Metroid.
What you should do is you should play the original Metroid a little bit so you can understand what it was like.
Find Kraid, and that'll tell you everything you needed to know about that game.
Then play Metroid Zero Mission.
I guess also internalize
only better.
The coolest thing Metroid 1 did was the game was called Metroid. The instruction book was like, watch out for fucking Metroids. They will fuck you up. You come into the game, there are no Metroids until the very, very, very end of the game.
Well, I think that Nintendo had a pattern of that, right? Zelda was The Legend of Zelda. It was not named after the name character.
Yep.
It's like Metroid is not named. The main character is Samus, not right. It's like Mario. It's like okay, the name of the game is the name of the main character.
Yep.
Sonic. The name of the game is the name of the main character. Zelda and Metroid. No, it's not. The name of the game is not the name of the main character. It's the name of something else, right?
But then you finally encounter Metroids, and they're just all up in your grill. There's a million of them constantly coming at you, and it's crazy.
Yep.
So the mechanic, because every Metroid game, well, most Metroid games have like either a new mechanic or the thing that's interesting about this Metroid. This one is it has the stealth component around a particular kind of. There's sort of a boss. I'd say they count as bosses.
Maybe.
Yeah. There's bosses, and then there's Emmys or EMMIs, which sort of function like bosses, but they're a little bit different. They add a stealth element that I have not encountered in Metroid games I've played before.
Metroid Fusion has the...
I never played Metroid Fusion, full disclosure.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Well, then how do you understand what's going on in Metroid Dread?
Because the plot is really simplistic, and it's really straightforward what's going on.
Well, Anyway, so yeah, the Emmy thing is basically there's certain zones in each of the areas of the planet, because it's a Metroid game, there's planet, named areas of the planet, but each major named area has a zone that's like the Emmy zone. So when you go there, there's like these doors, and you can just tell, because it signals to you visually, that once you go in that door, you'll be in the Emmy zone, and the Emmy zone is all weird and scary. And there's an Emmy in there, and you basically can't kill it. It's invincible. If it grabs you, you can escape with some really well-timed button presses, maybe, if you're really good.
The game is even like, look, listen, kids, don't think this is a mechanic we expect you to use. Do not rely on this. Do not try to get good at it. It is not the way to play this game.
There are people who can do it every time, no problem. I had about a 30% success rate.
I'm getting better at it, but it does something mechanically that I think is fascinating. It has echoes of something that Five Nights at Freddy's did very well too. If the game was, because the way this works is when you get into an Emmy zone, they will listen for you, hunt you down, and if they touch you, barring this QuickTime event, it's instant death. You just die. There's nothing you can do. You cannot fight them. You cannot even shooting them doesn't really do anything.
They're just invincible.
So if them touching you was just instant death, that's still really scary. But the fact that there's this tiny chance you might be able to escape by hitting X at the right time during that animation gives you this false sense of hope and makes you engage more with this instant death mechanic, and it increases.
Otherwise, if you didn't have a chance, you would just as soon as you knew you were caught, you'd be like, oh fuck it, right?
Yep.
You wouldn't even. But it's you hold on and you actually experience the horror of being caught. You submit yourself to that.
Similar to how Five Nights at Freddy's gives you it does all these things to convince you as a player, instead of just closing your eyes because you know the jump scare's coming, leaning in and paying attention so you end up getting more gotten by the jump scare than you as an intelligent adult otherwise would have been. This mechanic in Metroid Dread literally increases the dread you as a player feel around these Emmys, and I think that is the most interesting mechanical innovation used in this game. Full stop.
Now the problem is that, when I started playing the game, the first couple Emmy zones, right, it totally worked, right? It was very scary to go in the Emmy zones. The Emmy was catching me all the time, right? But then by the third or fourth Emmy zone, I realized, wait a minute, this game is structured in such a way, I don't need to go, because I was trying to explore the Emmy zone while avoiding the Emmy to figure out what the hell to do in there. But then I realized, wait a minute, every time you encounter a new Emmy door, the game is designed for you to just run through to the next Emmy door and escape the zone. And if you just keep going forward in that fashion as quickly as you can, you'll eventually arrive at the method to get rid of the Emmy permanently, then unlock that zone, removing the Emmy so that you can explore it freely. There's no reason to hang around in there. So once I realized that, after the third Emmy zone, I never got caught by an Emmy again ever.
Unless I fucked up some platforming, like that happens sometimes, but
yeah, but it's like I saw an Emmy zone and I didn't even give a shit about what was in that zone. I just ran I looked at the map. I said, okay, well, this is the entrance. Where's the next exit? It's probably around there. And I just went in. I ran through as quickly as I could. I didn't do stealth Metal Gear style. I didn't try to do any shenanigans. I just ran through, no exploring, no nothing, got out the other side. And the Emmy was now not scary at all once I realized what the deal was.
And that is a flaw. I think they should not have let you destroy the Emmys. They should have done that differently. I think
letting you destroy them is fine. I think what they should have done is given you some incentive or reason to explore and hang out in the Emmy zone while the Emmy was still there.
Yeah.
Right? Don't just construct it in such a way that just run through and explore it later. It's like, it's a Metroid game. I should basically always want to explore, and this thing should basically be like,
yeah, imagine if it was more like the Emmy was further
exploring under pressure.
Imagine a bigger Emmy zone that was really vertical, let's say, and there's a bunch of shit to explore, and you couldn't destroy that Emmy, but it was further away from you and you had more room to maneuver, and you just literally had to, with that sense of dread, play Metroid in a place where there's only one monster and it's really, really dangerous. But instead,
also, despite being stealth, right? The old Palace Guard stealth game, right?
Yeah.
You're hiding in the hedge maze, Zelda 64 style. There's a lot of other games that do that also. It's like they could have done that. You could have brought in more than one Emmy and been like, okay, you're in a ball in some vents.
Yep.
And it's like, go through the vents with the correct timing, looking at where the Emmys are so that their flashlights don't touch you while you're in ball shape.
Yep, they made all the Emmys the same, which was also kind of boring. I wish the Emmys
They're not all exactly the same. They do get more dangerous, but dealing with them is effectively the same because you just don't, and you run away from them and you don't.
So it's a problem. I called it the Portal problem back when we played Portal 2 all the way to the end, when I realized that Portal 1 and Portal 2, the puzzles are really good. I really love those games. In fact, I'm actually finally playing the multiplayer with our friend right now. We're going to finish that tomorrow. It's really easy.
20 years too late.
Yeah, but it's fun. But I realized Portal 2 got really easy when in the course of my playthrough, pretty early on, I realized that there's so few avenues of solving puzzles just with the limited tools you have in the game that you can kind of just fall forward into solutions without thinking about the problem at all. There's two angled places. Definitely going to make something momentum shoot out of those angles. One of the two of them will get me to the next area, or will get the cube to the next area. And approaching from every puzzle in Portal 2 with one or two vanishingly rare exceptions, you can just fall forward into victory without even understanding what the puzzle was. And I've noticed the Emmys were the same way. Just fucking run, and you'll beat the Emmy eventually without having to think about it at all. And I just see that as a flaw.
Puzzles, though, there is one mini puzzle, and that is, you in each Emmy area, you eventually beat this brain thing.
Yep.
Is reminiscent of the original Mother Brain, and you get your weapon temporarily powered up in such a way that it can defeat the Emmy.
I like how you have to do the really scary thing of shoot at it while it's approaching you until you melt the cover and.
But that sequence is actually sort of a puzzle because you need to shoot the gun at the Emmy. You need to charge it up, shoot it at the Emmy for a long enough period of time for it to break through the Emmy, right? It's not just shoot it and you beat it.
Yep.
So it's a mini puzzle of you have to get Samus into a position where the Emmy is far enough away and coming at you slowly face first, so that you can now get the weapon ready and fire it and have enough time to kill the Emmy with it before the Emmy reaches Samus. And it's like a mini puzzle to examine, the limited arena in which the Emmy is and where you can go.
Is there a really long... One time, it got me. There was a really long place. I think it was the third Emmy. And I was like, okay, I'll do the obvious thing. I'll stand at the end of this long, long area, and then I have a long time to shoot it. And it didn't follow down where I expected right away. And for just a second, I think, did it go? And then it fell on top of me.
Yep. There's a little mini puzzle of how do you got to get the Emmy into the right spot and Samus into the right spot. And then, there's an action game element of not only to do that, you have to skillfully get the weapon out and start shooting it with good aim and keep that good aim, right, on the Emmy's head until it's destroyed without fucking up. So that's a fun little game, like a sub game of the game there.
But aesthetically, the other thing, the Emmys are not that interesting of a puzzle for all the reasons we discussed. But the other cool thing about them is, at least in terms of their design, they are so creepy. That like burbling, chirping noise that they make when they're hunting you is fantastically creepy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything aesthetic about this game is 100% on point. Like. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever.
Yep, the environments are all radically different and interesting.
It's very Metroid-y. All the Metroid tropes are intact.
Yep. Like, I'm really enjoying it.
If you have a Switch, you should play this game, obviously.
It's a must-buy game. If you've never played a Metroid game, you could just start with this one. You don't need to know anything else.
Start with any of them, but I recommend playing, actually the remade ones are going to be much better to play. So I would play Metroid Zero Mission. Samus Returns, which is for the 3DS, is a remake of Metroid 2. Super Metroid is Metroid 3, and it's never been remade because it doesn't need to be remade. You can just play it on your Switch also, though, in the Super Nintendo app if you have Switch Online. And then you've got Metroid Fusion, which is kind of meh. Maybe you can like read about it or play it if you really want to.
Don't play Metroid Hunters. That's the multiplayer DS one.
Well, that's not. There are plenty of Metroid games that aren't in the Metroid main series. Like Metroid
that one is actually listed in the official Metroid story chronology for some reason.
I mean, they're all in the story chronology somewhere, but it's like Metroid 1, 2, 3, 4. This Metroid Dread is actually Metroid 5, right? Metroid Prime is like a side, prequel deal, right? And Metroid Hunters is another offshoot side deal. The only main Metroid games that are 2D normal Metroid games are Metroids 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. And this is Metroid 5. So Metroid Fusion is Metroid 4. So... it's not as good as the other ones, but it won't take you that long to beat it. It won't be a complete waste of time, but you don't have to. It's not as good. You can read about it just to get the plot, synopsis, whatever. And then play this one for reals.
Yeah. It's one of those, just if you got a Nintendo console, this is the reason you own a Nintendo console. These kinds of games.
Yep.
We can probably just stop there. That was plenty long.
Okay.
John Metroid, where